Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Federal Youth Network virtual learning series, Ask Me Anything. Please note that there will be a French session at 2:33. This one is an English session. I would like to begin by acknowledging that I am on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people, and I encourage all of you to acknowledge the land you are on as well. Today's session is networking and GC communities. You will have the opportunity to ask our speakers where they meet people, how they approach college virtually, and which communities you can join to bring the best of yourself to work. As we move through today's session, please ask your questions by using the Q&A button in the official language of your choice. Before asking questions, please review the Q&A and see if that topic has already been asked. You can vote for questions you like by clicking the thumbs up button. Please do not provide any protected or personal information. Keep questions as general as possible so the whole audience can benefit from them. This session is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel today. And to make the most out of this session, please make sure your questions relate to the topic of today's session. Please, I would like to hand off to our moderator, Khadija.
Thank you very much, Guillaume. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Khadija. I work as a senior policy analyst at the Office of Superintendent of Bankruptcy. I am also the co-chair of Future Leaders of Ontario. Future Leaders of Ontario, or for short, FLOW, is the interdepartmental network for new and young public servants based in the Ontario region. It's my pleasure to be the moderator, and I'm very excited for our discussion on networks and communities and networking and meeting people in the public service. So before we get started with your questions and asking our awesome speakers all of your questions, we want to first just, do a quick poll to get an idea of who's here. So we have 2 polling questions up right now. You don't have to participate in the poll if you don't want, but I'd love to get your answers. So the first question is, how big would you say is your network? Large and stable, big enough that I can get what I need, embarrassingly small, but I'm working on it, I don't have a network, and what is a network? Second question, how many networks or communities do you follow within the government of Canada? All of them, more than 10, a few, none. I did not know there was such a thing as a network. So we're waiting for your responses to come in. A few more seconds. Let's see what the answers are. Okay, so for our first question, how big would you say your network is? 54% of people chose it's embarrassingly small, but I'm working on it. 21% of people said I don't have a network, and 21% of people said my network is big enough that I can get what I need. Some great information for us, and hopefully our panelists will tell you today how you can make your network bigger and how you can benefit more from it. How many networks or communities do you follow within the GC? 75% of the folks who responded said only a few networks or communities. 23% said none. I did not know that we have such a thing as networks or communities. Great. So we know what kind of conversation we'll be having today. And right now I'd like to introduce our speakers. So our first speaker, Sarah Scott. Sarah Scott is the co-president of the NCRYPN. So I'm co-president of FLOW, Future Leaders of Ontario for Ontario region. Sarah Scott is in the NCR. She's co-chair of the NCRYPN, so that's the New and Young Professionals Network for new and young professionals based in the NCR. And Sarah Scott's day job is acting manager of transformation integration at the Canada Revenue Agency. Our second speaker is Jose Jimenez. Jose Jimenez works in product marketing at the Canadian Digital Service. And our third speaker for today is Amanda Bernardo. Amanda Bernardo is the acting director of change management and service design at Shared Services Canada. They have a wealth of knowledge, so I am very excited for our discussion today. If you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A. We want this to be as interactive as possible. And while we wait to get some questions, I'm going to start us off with a question. So my question to our panelists is, how do you find people with similar passions and interests? And I'll start off with Amanda.
Thanks for the question, and thanks for everyone for joining us. It's really great to be back at the FIN event. I think there's a lot of way to find people with similar passions and interests. One, obviously, you can participate in conferences or workshops or seminars related to your field. For those of you working in GC Digital, you may have recently taken part in Forward 50, which is a great way to connect with others working in kind of our line of sight, which is always great. There's always events happening, I think, around town. The policy community has a conference coming up. I think I saw the school's also having an innovation event coming up. So definitely keep your eye on those events, because that's a really great place to meet people. Also, some of your groups have special associations or training opportunities, for example, those in the EC categories, some of those working in IT. There may be specific associations or groups where you can participate in training or networking held by them. I know for change management, there's a ACMP network, and other fields have something similar. And lastly, I would say, for those of you that know me, obviously I'm really big on social media. If you do social media right, and I mean kind of cultivate why you're there, who your audience is, who you're connecting in, which conversations you're being part of, I think you can really find people with similar passions and interests. But it does put the onus a bit on you. You also, by sharing kind of what you're interested in, what you're passionate about, what you're working on, you're able to drive people to your accounts and engage with them. But similarly, if you find people outside of your department that are working on things, engage with them, because that's a great way to build your network and stay connected with them, especially as you move throughout government. Social media can be a great way for that as well.
I like that, Amanda. Thank you for your response. So I like that you highlighted social media as a way of getting to know people and sharing who you are, so that you can also attract people who have the same interests as you. I like that you mentioned that it's really all on you to really build your network. And that really brings me to my next question, Sarah. You're a new person to government. You're very eager to get to meet people, to be more involved. What steps can you take to get involved?
This is a really good question. So it can seem a little bit overwhelming at first. Couple of ways that you can start looking is even within your own department, there's probably going to be professionals associations. There's going to be a young professionals network. Take a look at your intranet. There's probably going to be lists of communities you can get involved in. And then you can check out social media. You can check out, like, GC Connects has some groups. Maybe they're not quite what you're looking for, but they may lead you to something else. And also asking people. I agree with Amanda, like, these days, networking isn't only just in person. Hello, my name is Sarah Scott. I would like to know you. You're also going to have to be putting information out onto social media, out onto the internet, and the right people are going to get connected with you.
I like that. yourself out on social media. Jose, do you have any also other ideas how you can maybe get involved, maybe especially as an introverted person, since it's sometimes harder to come out of your bubble if you're naturally more introverted?
I love how you're framing that, Khadija. I'd say from my experience, really approaching conversations with curiosity. I know it can feel really daunting to try to pitch yourself to someone. I know networking is often always framed as this transactional interaction you're having with somebody else. I personally don't approach it that way. And in any of the contexts that Amanda and Sarah have already shared, really, really being curious, not about what you can get out of a conversation, but what you could learn from somebody else, and letting that guide your questions. And again, in any this applies universally in any of those spaces you might be in, from the Forward 50 conference or the folks that are in the GC digital space, to participating in ERG groups like the Public Service Pride Network, or for example, the Infinity Group, which is a group for neurodivergent public servants. And people are really open to you when you approach with, true, is genuity a word? When you approach things in a genuine way.
Yeah, so I like that. Approaching people with curiosity, with authenticity, or with genuity. I cannot pronounce that word. But I like it. It's, you look at your interactions with people not as being transactional, but as, being, with that curiosity, just with that interest in getting to know people, and you don't know where it takes you. And I like, you brought up, for instance, the Public Service Pride Network. You brought up, for instance, the conference Forward 50. You mentioned an acronym that I want to highlight, ERG, which is stands for Employee Resource Group. And so employee resource groups are, either networks or communities of practice that have the purpose of, supporting employees, in different capacities, depending on what their mandates are. And throughout my experience in the public service, in the federal public service, I've noted that we have lots of these networks of communities of practice, which is awesome. And if I were to categorize them, I'd say that we have networks and communities of practice that are for, that are based on, a specific, stage in your career. So we have our, new/young professional networks, manager networks, executive networks. We also have networks that are, for a specific functional area. You got coaching community of practice, project management community of practice. What else is there? Really, any functional area, or any specialty or skill. There's probably some sort of community of practice, a data science community of practice, for instance, right? For anybody in the data world. So there's lots. There's also of note, in the past few years, we have more diversity and inclusion focused networks. Public Service Pride Network being an example. The Muslim Federal Employees Network is another example. And all these networks, you'll find them both are either, within a specific department or agency, their mandate is specific to a department or an agency, or they're interdepartmental. And so you got both, right? And so both within a department or across, to meet people across different departments and agencies. There's lots to check out. One question that we got is, how big should my network be? Man, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, sure. I know Guillaume told me in the background not to change my mic, but I was also told there was an issue. Can you hear is this one better? Thumbs up. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure you can't hear me okay. When it comes to the size of your network, I don't think it's about numbers. It shouldn't really be a numbers game. Really, it should be about quality. And so you should be aiming to find, meaningful connections rather just accumulating a large number of contacts. I know for me personally, as I built my network, I've really built it within each organization I've worked with. Not mentioned, earlier, but if you are looking to continue to build your network, don't be afraid to move laterally. I always say this to folks. It shouldn't be also about chasing promotions. If you move laterally, you can also gain a lot of experience and knowledge and build your network from new departments. And that's what I did. And I always have tried, regardless of where I went, to maintain contacts wherever I previously worked. So whether it's reaching out for coffee after the fact, following up and just seeing how their work is doing. If I see someone that I work with move, just to stay in touch. I think using, platforms like LinkedIn help to really stay connected with those folks so you can kind of follow them along. But really just cultivating those meaningful connections is really important. And I think for you, you should think about which, key individuals can maybe support you. So maybe you're looking for a mentor. And so make sure that your network has something like that, or a sponsor. Or maybe you'd like to be able to grow and develop new skills in your field. Maybe you should follow then thought leaders or be connected with folks that work in similar practices. Not just people senior than you. It's always great to build your network with senior executives or ADMs or deputies. I always try to reach out when I work in organizations at those levels. I think it's great, but also reach out at level, the people that are working alongside you in the trenches, if you will, shortly above you or at same level. They can teach you so much and likely have a lot more to offer you than a deputy minister can. The experience, greatly vary when you look at that. But really at the end of the day, just think about those meaningful connections. And I think it's also okay to keep in mind that your network is going to change. There were people in my network when I first started in government. Our relationship now has changed, or maybe they're not even in my network anymore. Maybe it's now more aligned to what I'm doing in transformation, where the start of my career was very much environmental policy. So it's okay to expand, to minimize, to grow it. But even if you have a handful of people, I always say, like in high school, you're kind of friends with everyone goes out, everyone parties, everyone's together. Now as an adult, I think I have a core group of 10 women who are my best friends. Some of them we went to high school with, some of them are from our careers, and it's the quality of those 10. They're so much better than, just having a million, let's just say. So quality over numbers for sure.
I like that. So definitely the quality of the people. It comes from the quality of the interactions. The more curious are, the more authentic you are, the more likely people are to remember you, and then the more likely they are to, accept to take you on as a mentee if you reach out to them, for instance, for mentorship. I also really like that you mentioned lateral moves and how important, how useful it can be to take another position at level in another organization and also expand your network that way, also build skills, but then also, depend on, folks at your level, also to learn a lot from them and build your network that way. Sarah, I'm going to come to you right now and then also ask you, your thoughts on this question.
Sure.
Other ways to build your network, how do you do it? We said it's not a numbers game. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with Amanda that the numbers are less important than the quality and who you're networking with. I tend to see kind of like a few circles of your network. So you're going to have sometimes your professional network can kind of become a personal network as well. With certain individuals, they become like actually quite close in your life. Then you're going to have another layer of people that you work with actively, and that can change, like Amanda was talking about. There might be people that you work with regularly that you can reach out with a question about your current work. Like Amanda, you were saying you're more about like transformation now, so your network's going to be different than it was when you first started, because you're working on different stuff. And then there's going to be, well, you could have infinite circles, but I see it as one more circle of people you might have connected at an event. You might have shaken their hand or added them on LinkedIn or follow them on Twitter. And they might work in the government. They might work in a specific area you're interested in. That's the kind of network that I see lots of potential that you can work at it. You can have a little chat in their DMs. You can ask them for a coffee chat. You can just follow along or comment on some of the things they're posting. Yeah, I see that. That's a really kind of broader one. That circle, that outer circle might only be 3 people, and that's okay. But it might be 150 people. You never know.
Jose, I'm going to come to you right now. Actually, I do want to encourage everyone. I do love the fact that we're getting lots of questions. I do want to also encourage you, if you really want to hear an answer for a question, to give it a thumbs up so we know what you really, really want to hear, and so we can prioritize asking those questions. Jose, I'm going to come to you to ask you. I know you have a very busy job and your day is quite busy, etc. And so you sometimes feel like you don't have time for networking during your 9 to 5 job. Do you find time for networking? How do you do it?
Thanks for the question, Kateja. A lot of my job is meeting with public servants, which makes it a little bit easier to network as part of it, but only one specific context, in the context of the products that we're creating. I've decided to prioritize specific areas that I'm looking to personally develop myself in. For example, learning more about the civic technology space. And that helps me prioritize the activities that I choose to engage with outside of work. Because really, if you like to organize your day into heads down time for work, for example, that's really, you're not giving yourself a lot of leeway to engage in those conversations that other people may otherwise engage in during the workday, whether it be like a coffee chat or a mentoring chat, which are very, I don't want to call them popular, but it's very normal to organize those in the context of government. So if you can't find time for that during your work hours, really participating in groups involved in those areas you might be interested in, involved in those areas that you might be looking to develop, will help you have those conversations that will allow you to nurture yourself and grow. For example, I'm based out of Toronto. Here in Toronto, there is a group called Civic Tech Toronto, of which a number of my friends are actually involved with. And while I haven't attended one of their specific meetings as of recent, I am still connected with the people that I met through there. And you start realizing a lot of these circles tend to start overlapping. And when that happens, you also start finding ways that you can still mingle with people, but perhaps, in a more efficient way. You start running into each other all the time.
Nice. So there are certainly ways to network during work hours, but then also to network after hours with different communities of practice, or even professional associations that may not necessarily be Government of Canada focused, but have a lot of participation from Government of Canada employees. And then that can also help you broaden your network. Amanda, if I'm obviously a public servant, I want to try to get my manager support to allow me to, participate in the community of practices annual AGM or attend a monthly meeting or such like that. Is that a conversation that I should have with my manager? And if so, how can I do that?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. I would say first, if you have a good manager, they should kind of bring those to your attention as well, right? Part of your, everyone's going through PMAs right now. Hopefully you are. If you're not, again, red flag, but hopefully you're going through proper PMAs. And right now is your mid-year. So if you're starting to see maybe communities or networks that are aligned to your interests, bring that up. You can always participate in them as well. I actually always encourage my employees to participate in at least one corporate initiative. It's a great way to build your network beyond your bubble of your team. I find especially with hybrid work right now, you see who you have to see. So you have to be intentional about making those connections. But absolutely ask your manager about it. I try to always send, events that I see. We have a great Women in STEM network here at SSC. I always pass those on to my team members. If I see things from the school, if I see things that are happening in conferences. But that said, your manager, your director, they're also very, very busy. So if they don't always have the chance to send everything, and there's something that you're very interested in, the onus is on you to ask. And a great way to maybe try to minimize, I wouldn't say every week send your boss a conference or a workshop or a networking event, right? But prioritize the ones that really are important to you. Use your PMAs to say, this is something I'd like to work on this year to help grow my career within the public service. And then highlight maybe a few that you know that are happening throughout the year. And as smaller ones pop up, you can always say, I'm really interested in this. I'm on schedule for all of my deliverables this week. Is it possible that I attend? So that way they have a view of your capacity and then your interest to attend things as well. But it definitely doesn't hurt to ask. So don't hesitate to do that.
Definitely. So definitely, if you're interested in something, ask. The onus on you, and you're the one who's in charge of your career. Sarah, we go to these networking events, we participate in these communities of practice, we meet a lot of people. How do we now, keep in contact with people over the long term?
Great question. That was definitely something that I felt really was challenging for me when I was in university, and everyone's telling me like, just network, and they wouldn't tell you how, and you just kind of like cold call people on LinkedIn, and now what do I do with them, right? I think Amanda mentioned it earlier. Just reaching out to people and asking them to help you and asking them for information or jobs is not true networking. You're also going to have to be putting out information. This is what I'm interested in. I saw this article. I thought of you because our work intersects in this different area. And again, quality over quantity. If you're doing that with 15, 20 people in a week, you're going to burn out. I think there's a question about that later on if we get to it, about feeling overwhelmed with this kind of thing. It's absolutely going to be overwhelming. Start small. Try a few. You may end up just kind of following them, and you might spend a little bit more time on somebody else, but apologies if there's loud noises getting a text message at the same time. Yeah, I would focus on the quality and focus on putting out some information. What am I interested in? Maybe you don't know. Maybe you want to be exploring. And like Jose said, be curious about all the conversations.
And so the idea then is that those, strong conversations with folks will then, allow you maybe perhaps to remember, you'll remember each other better. You'll have email exchanges with each other, and then you'll always be able to come back to that person, several years down the road and stay in contact with that person.
Absolutely. And to kind of combine actually the last question that Amanda was answering and this question, I absolutely encourage talking to your manager for sure. But I think that there's a way to pitch it as well. We always think of networking as, hey, I want a better job. Like, what can you do for me? You can give me a better job. But it's actually, that's only one part of it. Another part of it, and maybe the way that you could pitch it to your organization, is that you are going to be able to do your job better. So ultimately, you're going to be able to serve Canadians better because you are going to understand, you're going to be able to collaborate, you're having all sorts of connections, and you're understanding what's going on. I think that demonstrates passion about your work. And I think that, like Amanda said, any good manager is going to be ecstatic about that.
I like that. Jose, you're also very active on social media. Do you have any tips for how to deal with any negativity or deal with being overwhelmed with information, new contacts, etc. on social media?
I certainly would not say as active as Amanda, whose discipline on posting is something I look up to. But as a person that has seen these requests come in through their inbox, it's really, for me at least, it comes down to setting boundaries and being clear about what I am able to, how I am able to help someone, how I'm not able to help someone. In my specific context, our organization has been under a hiring freeze for the last for some time now. And often when I get that specific type of request, I use that to set my boundary. When we get into conversations about how the government is run or how the government of the day is managing the country, I really go back to center myself on the values of the public service, and that is we are here to serve the elected government, and we're trying to do that to the best of our ability, and really setting the context of how big the government of Canada is. People see government with a big G. They don't understand that there's over 133 different departments and agencies, and that we're just all here in our small slice of the pie, trying to push this ship ahead. And while I'm here, I'd like to go back to Amanda's point on conferences. I know conferences can sometimes, especially for students, seem not just daunting but also expensive. I know for 50 to go attend in person, it was over $1,000. And some of you might have the training and development budgets, others might not. If you do, that's great. Use it for that. If you're looking for more affordable conference options, not only do you have the option to attend conferences virtually, but also there are specific groups out there that organize conference for specific types of demographics, and they do so and they do so at a steep discount. So for example, I was at this you can't see it. I was at this conference called Queer Tech in Montreal 2 weeks ago, and that ticket for me was only $160 for a full 2-day conference. So groups like Queer Tech will organize events like these in this, and as you can probably infer in the name, for queer folks in technology. And if you're in, there are great opportunities to network. I met people from the communication security establishment there, from different organizations in the government of Canada based out of Montreal. So if you are looking to attend conferences, but the budget's not necessarily there for you, look for groups that are organizing conferences for perhaps people in specific minority groups. Again, I'll drop the name in the chat. In my specific case, this was Queer Tech, but there's a ton of them out there. Another one based out of Toronto is out on Start Proud. There's also out on Bay Street for folks that are in the law space or in the business space. Really, really, there are opportunities there. You just have to go look for them. Back to that first point, it's on you.
Oh, I agree with you. The more you look, the more you find. And I sometimes have difficulties trying to figure out what conference or what event or what should I pitch to my manager, because I can be at conferences all day and all year. So I agree with you, Jose. We've been talking now for some time about networking, these communities of practice. Amanda, you've been, for many years in the public service. You've built your network, with a lot of skill, joined a lot of communities of practice. What have you found, maybe most surprising, or what has been one of your biggest lessons learned from this journey?
I think one thing that's really great about communities, especially, is that when I started, so I've been with the government for a decade now. And when I started, especially as a young professional, you might not always get all the experience or skill training or development opportunities in your day job, but you can always find that in a community. So I had volunteered with things like Leaders GC, with various communities of practice. And I got to do things that I wasn't necessarily doing in my day job. And I remember early on, I had put this in my CV, like areas I had volunteered with or communities I had been part of. So it was one thing to be a member, there's always a benefit, but when you volunteer, there's such a great opportunity there for you. And I remember it was just briefly mentioned in something when I was applying at a junior level. And the hiring manager had said to me, you really should touch on this more because it highlights a lot of great things that you were able to do. And I said to myself, I actually said it to them, volunteering, and didn't realize that, it had a place in that conversation. But it definitely does. And I think that was one of the biggest takeaways, is that to find those communities where maybe I can gain some skills. I volunteered on the board with IPAC. I got to help run national events. There's just an opportunity to build a skill set that wasn't part of my day-to-day routine. The other thing is there's just so many great relationships that you can make. And if there's one thing that's amazing about the government of Canada, is that the world really is our oyster. I'm horrible with expressions, so hopefully that's it.
But all that to say is there's so much opportunity here. And oftentimes those opportunities are happening laterally behind the scenes. They're not necessarily from a job competition. They're just, hey, we're looking for someone at level. I think I get maybe, 30 or 40 resumes a month from people trying to help me facilitate finding job opportunities for them. And in the same respect, hiring managers always do that. So building those relationships, building those connections, and nurturing them long term can help you find, a long-term career as well in the government of Canada. And I think if you do it right, that's one of the best things networking can give you. It's the development, it's the skills, it's the relationships, but it'll also help facilitate, conversations that could lead to job opportunities in the future. Because someone might say, I had such a great relationship with Sarah. She did this great work. I'm going to refer her over here. I wonder what Sarah's doing now, because now I'm a director and I'm over here and I'm looking for someone. So nurture those relationships. Don't burn bridges. That's maybe another lesson in terms of communities and networks. They're big and they're very small. People talk, but definitely take advantage of being part of them. I think you'll surprise yourself about how much you learn about yourself, and that's the greatest gift that any of these things can give you is that self-awareness to help guide you in where you want to go next in your career. I also just really, really quickly, and I know I'm kind of like stealing the mic, but there was some stuff about people feeling overwhelmed about networking. And I wanted to just loop back on that because I could see it in the Q&A. And let me tell you, like, I can sit here and do this panel and I can go to networking events and people will always think I'm very extroverted. I am not. I am very introverted. I'm more of an ambivert. I recharge being alone as opposed to being with people. So definitely listen to yourself and manage how you network, especially in conferences. It can be overwhelming, like a 3-day conference, all these people are talking to you. That can feel very daunting. Also, you don't have to have like 20 coffee chats a month, like space them out, feel comfortable, prepare yourself. If you're meeting with a deputy or you're meeting with someone that's really making you nervous to network, have some questions, prepared in advance. What do you want to ask them? What do you want to get out of that conversation? And also there was a comment, I think in the Q&A that said, people are reaching out from the private sector and often want your advice, and that can be overwhelming. I think in a month I get like 30 requests of people trying to like navigate or move or looking for advice. And before I used to always try to please everyone and squeeze everything into my calendar. And it was getting so overwhelming and draining for me because then I'm working longer hours to make up for time that I need during my day. So now I just schedule it when it works for me. At the end of the day, if they want time with you, and this goes to all of you because you're just as, powerful and leaders yourselves in your own right, do what works for you and listen to yourself, because networking is only as valuable as the output it provides. And if the output is overwhelm or anxiety or just stress, then maybe it's okay to take a step back. And that is also true for social media. I know a lot of emphasis often goes on, you should be on social media. You should be on social media. Do what works for you. If being on there is something you have time for, it has something that you enjoy doing, do it. If you don't want to be on it, you'll survive. Your career will still be okay. There's other ways to network and meet people. But just know yourself and what stresses you out. And really a big thank you to whoever asked that question, because I think there's a lot of stress sometimes, like, you have to do all of these things to be a good public servant or to network effectively and build your network. It's not true. The best way you can be a good public servant is to listen to yourself and to do what works for you. And in the end, it will pay off tenfold. So thank you for that question.
I agree. And even if you're not on social media, we do in the Government of Canada have GC Exchange, GC Collab. Many of the networks and communities of practice have a page on GC Exchange or GC Collab. And so, they share information, post different resources, information, etc. on there. So I think you can certainly still be involved in GC communities and networks, even if you don't have social media. Sarah, we want to get your advice. What are some tips for having a coffee chat with someone?
Tips on how to do it, how to reach out, and how to...
Yeah, so if you see someone at a YPN event, you want to learn more from them, you get their email. What do you do once you get their email?
That's a great question. I'm like of two minds. So be confident. Nothing wrong with cold emailing someone saying, "Hi, I met you at that networking event, or I saw you online. You were speaking at that panel on networking. I would love to have 30 minutes of your time." But then also have a reason, be specific. Like Amanda said, think about what it is that you want to ask that person. Think about what it is that you're hoping to get out of the conversation, and plan it a little bit. And it's totally possible that they may never answer you. You never know what they're going through, personal, professionally. Maybe the email will get lost, and that's okay. Do it again next time with the next person, but often they will answer you. A lot of people love to talk about their work. They love to talk about what they're up to. They love to talk about how they got there, what their career was previously. It's a pretty fun thing to talk about when you talk about yourself, right? So asking those kinds of questions, at the beginning of my career, I've been in the government for 5 years. So even 5 years ago, I found that really intimidating to email somebody like, well, what if they don't remember me? But totally okay to do it. What I've come up with is like a little bit of a template for that kind of email, or if it's within my department, it's a Teams chat, introducing myself a little bit. "Hi, I'm so and so. We met at this thing. Would love to have a coffee chat to discuss XYZ, maybe just one thing." I'd suggest do that. Write it out first before you send them the email or call them up, and see how that feels with yourself, and then come prepared to the coffee chat.
That advice. Be prepared, be confident, know why you're reaching out to someone, and go for it. You never know what you'll get from talking with anyone. And if you don't get a response, then it's not the end of the world. You don't know what their circumstances are, but at least you tried. And I think, as we said today, the possibilities are truly endless in the government of Canada, with the amount of communities of practice and networks that we have. Some are doing in-person events. They're going back to the in-person. You can certainly propose doing an in-person networking event, to your community of practice or network if they currently are not doing in-person events. So the possibilities are endless. There's lots that we can, get out of networking and out of meeting people. So I think our message to everyone really is, explore the opportunities. There's endless opportunities. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today for this discussion. And I want to give it back to Guillaume, to close us off.
Thank you so much, Khadija. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you. It was such an informative session. Just to let you know that we have one final polling question. The result of this poll will not be shared. So was Helly, if somebody can just show, was this session a good use of your time? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so Career Bootcamp 2024. Yes, it's only a couple of months away. Once again, Federal Youth Network will be hosting the event virtually in January. Be sure to add it to your learning plan and register so that you don't miss it out. CBC allows learners to attend the sessions that interest them. You can join and attend the full event or pick one or two sessions that catch your eye. The choice is up to you. Thank you for joining us today. And as a reminder, there's a French session in a couple of minutes, in about 16 minutes now. Resources will be available on our wiki page, and the recording of this session will be available on our YouTube channel. Please be sure to join us next month for another AMA session where you can ask all your questions unanswered from the last 3 sessions. Okay? Bye-bye. It's been a pleasure. Bye. Have a good one.